Hello and welcome to Radio NIGP. May is an exciting time of year as the school year is ending and many of us are busy with the end of the fiscal year. We might also be preparing for fun summertime activities. But as the business of your life continues, you can't forget to take time to care for yourself. May is Mental Health Month. So grab your drink of choice, sit back, and enjoy this episode of Radio NIGP.
Welcome. I'm Kevin Yin, and with me are my great colleagues of Hot Topics, Tara Acton and Don Buffum. This month, we're talking about mental health awareness. And when I'm thinking about mental awareness, I think I want us to focus on what it is as leaders we could do for our folks to alleviate stress or reduce their stress level. And so one of the things I think about is being flexible with our folks, giving them the freedom, the time to take care of work or of personal life, personal activities, balancing that with the work that we have to get done. And that could be allowing them to have the time to have their appointments, to take a walk, to step away from their desk, go ahead and enjoy lunch, right? And so, which is a rarity for many of us. But these are some of the activities that we can do, I think, that can help staff be less stressful in the office.
I like how you talk about lunch. That's something this year that I've tried to be a little bit more intentional in. And I think all of those are good examples of things that we can do. One, that we can enable our staff to do, but things that we can also do throughout our day to manage our own stress levels, because we're all either our supervisors or ended our careers as supervisors. And so we have this responsibility to other people, which if we're grumpy or we're not feeling 100%, our staff feel it. So the idea of like taking your breaks, I live in Arizona, we're a right to work state, you're entitled to 2 15-minute breaks in an 8-hour day. And how many of us don't actually take those? I would try to do things where I'd say, okay, I've got time between meetings. I'm going to go walk around the block. I'm going to walk around the campus, get some fresh air, and just modeling that for our staff to say, not only is it okay, but I'm going to do it too. Lunch is a huge one. I routinely skip lunches. And so this year I've been trying to make myself leave for an hour, because taking a lunch at your desk does not recharge you. Sometimes just taking a lunch in the break room doesn't recharge you. Like, again, go outside, go pick something up, go sit in a park, but do something, walk away from the office. Yeah. Sometimes it's to get your mental health back and to not be overwhelmed.
Just also that when you're in the office, right, you're interrupted. So it doesn't matter if you're at your desk, lunchroom, in the hallway, wherever, you get interrupted. And really, did you actually have a break? Mm-hmm. Did you actually get a little mental break from work per se, right? And so, and I don't think you do. And I think we really have to be that intentional and get out, right? Get away from the office environment. And I mean, I've been interrupted at a gym, and so they found me.
I'm curious your thoughts on this, Don, because I know we've talked about even just like leaving work and getting time.
I think you're both right on, is that you've got to model it, and you've got to accept the fact that there are different ways different people can be de-stressed or have anxiety levels go down. Some people read, some people do puzzles, some people walk, some people listen to music, some people, do different things, yoga. But modeling a behavior yourself, like you're saying, is important. One thing I did want to mention is one thing we can try to do is reduce the stress level throughout the organization. And one of the ways I think doing that is basically it's transparency. When people see things going on in the organization, budget cuts, new computer programs coming in. They don't know how it's going to impact their lives. And if we can be transparent and tell them what we know when we know it, they'll probably feel a little bit less stress. Sometimes it may increase their stress, but at least you're being transparent and telling them, hey, look, we know that this new software program is going to change your job. We can't tell you how it's going to change your job, but I can assure you, we're going to help you through this process. We're going to help give you additional training. It will be better for you in the long run. Transparency, I think, is important. And making it okay. Tara, you, I think, have hit on this before, is making it okay to talk about yourself. I'm feeling stressed right now. I'm feeling anxious right now. Because if people feel like if you're feeling it and you're doing things to improve yourself, then maybe they can come to you and talk about it more.
I was going to say a couple different things. I've worked in organizations where we've gone through change and it was very stressful. I've worked through organizations where we went through what could be extremely stressful change, but it wasn't. And it was entirely that. And sometimes, as a boss that's at the executive level, there are some things you can't share. So you have to work and build that trust with your team ahead of time and say, I can't give you all of the details right now, but I want you to trust me that as soon as I know something that is knowledge that can be shared, I'm going to share it with you. If it's really stressful times, maybe you have huddle meetings weekly or every other week or after you've had those meetings and say, here's what I'm empowered to share with you at this point, so that they're not inserting it for themselves. And then I think the other piece of, I joke all the time, like if I'm having a rough morning or I slept in or whatever it might be, I'll come in and I'll say, hey guys, I'm kind of grumpy this morning, so I'm going to close my door and turn up some music and crank through some work. Feel free to step in if you need to. Some ways it models like, hey, I might have an off day too, but also it's a warning to them to be like, I know I'm grumpy. It's not about you. I'm going to work through it, so you're prepared for it. And I think one of the things that we had talked about in preparation for this was there's some things that we can't talk about. So if one of my employees just seems like they're off the rails and something's stressing them out, I can't just go up to them and say, hey, Kevin, I've noticed that you're really distracted at work and you've been late the last couple of days or whatever it might be. I really think you might have a mental health problem and you should do this. But if I'm modeling it for you, you might actually be comfortable coming into my office and saying, hey, Tara, I don't know what's going on, but I feel a little bit off. And here's what I'm struggling with. Because then that opens the door for us to share what employee benefits exist to help them. And I think we should talk about, like, I don't know a position or a job, especially in government, that doesn't have employee assistance. Yeah. Like, take advantage of employee assistance, because we are not the experts, and we shouldn't put ourselves in that role. But
yeah, and they may not always come to us with those kinds of issues, but it's perfectly okay to say, hey, Tara, I noticed that you've been coming in late for the last couple of days, and performance has been a bit waning. Is what's going on, right? You can certainly ask them that, and not pinpoint to any kind of mental.
Not try to diagnose them.
Not try to diagnose them, or direct them to go to a doctor or whatever it might be, because that's not our place to do that. But it is our place to be aware of performance, of what's going on with staff. And so we can certainly say those kinds of things. That just kind of brings it out. Now, if they said, no, nothing at all, I'm good, just had my off days, great. Well, let me know if there's something I can do to help, right?
So we're getting tight on time, and I wanted us to make sure that we talked about one other thing. I'm going to take control. We'll go around the horn, sort of talking about burnout, recognizing burnout in yourself or recognizing burnout in your staff. And I think that's kind of where you're going with this, Kevin. So I'll punt it to Don. Don, what are your thoughts on ways that you can manage burnout in yourself or others?
Well, for myself, it's a matter of realizing that I'm, not myself, and, focusing on doing a few things, going for walks, getting within myself, and realizing that the worst that can happen is a few days that are not going to be comfortable. I mean, I'm not going to lose my job over something. I'm not, just acceptance of the way it is and realizing that I need to do something to help myself and accepting that.
Kevin, do you have other thoughts on it?
I think the only thing that I think about when I'm thinking about burnout, I always think about because if you're intuitive and you listen to yourself, for me, when I hear myself say one more thing, if I tell myself I'm just going to do one more thing, that one more thing will lead to nothing but bad stuff because I'm gonna make mistakes, I'm gonna get injured, anything at all. So that's my cue to say, okay, this is my cue to stop because doing that one more thing is not gonna do any good in anybody. Now, most times it's going to be okay, but it could lead to burnout, it could lead to injuries, it could lead to mistakes, etc. And so that's my cue. And I communicate that to my staff because it's really tough for everybody to know what that point is, that boiling point, right? Steam is great, right? Because that gives you a lot of power. But then when it gets to that boiling, you've gone too far, right?
I
And
like
that's
the
the part we
idea of
just got to be
gone too far. Like that's for me, that's mine. It's when I catch myself working late when I wasn't planning on it, or feeling like I need to come in early because that's the only way I'm going to get stuff done. And I think for me, I mentioned it already. Sometimes I'm going to close my door and crank up music that probably isn't office appropriate and just try to get work done. Or don't be against checking your calendar and calling in and saying, look, this week has been stressful. Y'all, I'm taking a mental health day. You've got this. I just need some downtime at home. And then I think recognizing that in our staff as well, you just have to know, and you know what people's normal working patterns are. And like you said, if I recognize that Kevin's always 5 minutes early and he's always smiling and in a good mood, and for some reason, I should never say Kevin's always 5 minutes early, but we'll just assume for this one. If you're starting to show up 10 minutes late every day and you can't focus and you're grumpy, then there's probably something going on. And that's the way for me to open up the door. And I think even sometimes just saying, go take a break, tell your staff, go take a break, take a 15-minute break, whatever's on your calendar can wait. I'll vouch for you. Go take a walk, go call your mom, do whatever it is that brings you a little bit of joy. Because we're all better when we're not feeling the pressure of life. So we definitely have gone over on our time. So I'll take this opportunity just to wrap us up and say thanks to listening. And we'll be back next month with another segment of Radio NIGP.
Hello, everyone. Last week we attended NIGP VCon conference, and it was so great to see over 475 people live in those events. We had 2.5 days full of talk about technology, cybersecurity, and AI, and people walked away with greater understanding and knowledge of what is shifting in the world and how we can stay caught up. These sessions are all recorded and are live for the next 60 days. So if you attended live, you can go back and watch your favorite sessions. Or if you want to still join, I'm sure that NIGP will allow you to pay a fee to watch those sessions and those recordings. A lot of great content was given. There was tons of information, and it was a really great conference. Now let's look ahead. In July 27th through the 30th, NIGP Forum is going to be kicking off with its 80th anniversary. It's rooted in history, leading with vision, and we can expect powerhouse keynotes and inspiring messages, and then networking with our peers and professionals and our mentors and mentees there. It's just going to be a great event in Denver, Colorado. We hope to see you there. We're excited for you to be here, and thank you for watching Radio NIGP.
Hello, everyone. I'm Linda Allaire, and I'm on the staff with Radio NIGP. And I'm very pleased to have a co-staff member with me today, Miss Stacy Adams, who currently is the Director of Statewide Sourcing for the state of South Carolina. Stacy, could you introduce yourself to our viewers just so they get a little bit of background about who you are and what you do and where you've been?
Where I've been. I like to say I've been a little bit of everywhere. So I tripped and fell into procurement, as they say. It was not intentional. I had no idea what I was doing when I did it, but that was all the way back in 2003. And I went to work for county government. I served as both the purchasing and accounts payable manager, and worked my way up there at that county level and got to see that perspective of how local government functions and how that works. And I stayed there until 2010, where I went and joined a state agency or higher education, a unique unit, if you will, which is the Medical University of South Carolina. And I served both as a procurement specialist and procurement manager there. But I was there a short stint, left there towards the end of 2011 because I got what I called my dream job, if you will. I always wanted to work at the central procurement office. And so in 2011, I had the opportunity to come there. I started out as a PM1, advanced to a PM2, became a team lead for our goods and services team, and then a project liaison for our IT proviso for shared services. And that all happened really pretty quick, I would say. So from 2011 to 2017, I just made that progression and just kept learning and doing and evolving over time. In 2018, I became the Deputy State Procurement Officer, which later became and was retitled the Director of Statewide Sourcing, which I still am. And then they've added another title, both and in 2024 as the Deputy Chief Procurement Officer. So I feel like having the opportunity to have juggled all of those hats gives me a perspective from everybody wherever they are, and have had that opportunity to be exposed to local, state, and that central office. But it's been an exciting journey. I got bit by the bug straight out of the gate when I fell into procurement. I loved it and just said I wanted to learn everything that I could, and I wanted to perfect my craft and then always never stop learning. And so I just love it. Love it. Haven't looked back since.
The best job in the world if you have the fortitude to stick it out, right?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the key ingredient. You got to have the fortitude to stick it out because it's not always easy, right?
So, thinking about fortitude, can you just share with our viewers maybe some of the challenges that you've experienced during your career path? Maybe what some of the successes were, and even if it wasn't so successful, was there one that was a great learning opportunity?
Yeah, absolutely. I really first want to say the first thing I think of, Linda, with that is Thankfully, I have really been blessed to have some outstanding mentors in my career. And having someone that's really willing to share their experience and provide an alternative perspective really makes a difference, whether you're in a season of success or if you're in a season of challenge. Having that person that you can go to that can kind of share ideas and get you outside of sometimes what may feel like a panic mode, or sometimes you might just need to vent. And maybe I can't do that with the person next door because I don't want it to go all the way down around the hall and back or whatever. It's easier for me to call someone in my network and say, hey, I am really struggling with this. Have you ever dealt with this before? And that has really been instrumental, whether again, I'm getting a good idea and I'm walking in success, or I'm struggling to find an answer. But if I had to say just in generality, the biggest thing that has been a challenge is navigating that supply risk. It's not anything new. It's something that is always there and it's always shifting depending on which market you're in. So figuring out what the market risk is, trying to ward against any fraud, any issues with cost or quality or delivery risks or anything of that nature. Looking at the compliance, when you have the anti-corruption or policies you're trying to adhere to, you never know when somebody's going to have the next great idea and all of a sudden your policies and processes are challenged and you've got to try to adjust to that and account for that. So those are the things that I would always say, which are some of the things that I love about procurement. It's never the same. There's no guarantees. What was one way yesterday may not be that way today. And so that just keeps you engaged and always striving to do new things.
Absolutely. And, that crystal ball gazing about how you can deal with things and having somebody that you can use as a sounding board to keep you real and keep you focused.
Yeah.
And then, of course, we had COVID, and that brought
Yeah.
everything, those supply chain issues, that just amplified everything, right? People were not prepared,
No.
mostly in any manner.
No.
So, thinking about things you mentioned, like tariffs aren't new. We've struggled with them in the past. They're back now. We had COVID. What do you see as one of the most pressing challenges from your perspective over the next 3, 5 years, maybe 10 years, if your crystal ball goes that far?
Yeah, that crystal ball, right? Well, I think, first I want to celebrate, Linda, as I think about that. You mentioned COVID, and that was really an interesting time, but I think that was really a time and a way that procurement professionals truly had to handle things that they had never experienced before. And that brought what we do to the forefront. So we were able to really showcase our innovative ideas. We were able to pull from our professional networks, call on our strategic partners, and really make that magic happen. So while it stretched us beyond our comfort zones, it really also showed how procurement can shine in the face of adversity. And I feel like that people that maybe never even recognized procurement before suddenly understood our value and really started inviting us to the table more. And while I never wish for another pandemic in my crystal ball, I can certainly appreciate how we learned and how we grew through that experience. And I think that helped us equip and realize how agile we can be, even when we think that we can't. You have to sometimes get creative. And like you said, tariffs aren't new, but we are facing some economic challenges and changes that are happening perhaps in a more rapid rate than what we're used to seeing in government. Usually government goes at a pretty slow pace. And right now things, you never know from day to day what challenge you may be facing with that. So tariffs and inflation, I think, are not going to go away. I think they're going to be here for a while. They've been here for many years. I think we're going to have to adjust our approach for how we deal with it. Many of our contracts aren't designed for this, what we're facing in our economy today. So we're having to figure out how to handle those ever-changing price adjustment requests, those temporary surcharges, those, things that while, I wish that we could come up with a cookie cutter answer, right, to handle this, but really there's not one, Linda. we just going to have to keep doing what we always do in procurement, and that's just share ideas and collaborate and overcome, adapt, improvise, and try again, back up and punt and try. But that's what I love about procurement. Truly, we are a profession that doesn't hesitate to jump in and help and serve others and each other. We truly are our best when we all succeed and we don't leave anyone behind. And I love that about our profession. So, regardless of what else comes at it, we truly are in this together. And it doesn't matter if you're in Canada, Montana, Florida, Texas, South Carolina. We all come together and we unify and we figure it out. We find a way to make it work. We aren't hesitant to say this works well. And we also will bite the bullet and say, man, this didn't work so great. Don't do this, Linda. Don't follow me off this cliff. This was a bad idea. So whatever, comes with us, I think we really are going to have to adjust with some of the same things we always have, that supplier challenges, market changes, price adjustments, contract administration woes, same challenges. Talent, we know that's going to be a big issue. We are facing a lot of retirements, baby boomers. The workforce is changing. Making sure that those that are entering into procurement, whether it's intentional or they trip in it, that they're really equipped to understand and to know what success looks like and how to get there. And the importance of why I always say, I'm country. I'm from Texas, Linda. So, I always use the analogy of a fence. It's really important that you understand why the fence got put up in the first place before you just take it down and move it. And then all of a sudden, all the cattle are out and running amok, and you're like, whoa, how'd that happen, right? There's a reason for that fence. And I think it's super important that we take time to share how we got to where we are so that people learn from that and don't make mistakes that could be totally avoidable.
Well, I'm a country
Sorry,
girl, and I
I
can certainly
went all
understand
over,
that
Linda.
analogy. Yeah. And your comment about, the perspective of procurement being essential. I worked at a hospital here in Ontario during SARS in 2003. And up to that point, the procurement department was not considered essential. When we came out of it, we were considered essential. We were one of the ones who weren't sent home. We had to stay at work. So, and we never stopped out of stuff. We came close a few times, but those experiences and sharing them with other people and the NIGP family network is, the best resource, I think, that regardless of what side of the border you're on, there's always something that you can find from a colleague somewhere.
100%.
So that's just one of probably the primary benefit of being part of the NIGP family.
Yes.
But on that note, I have another question for you.
Ask away.
You have been a volunteer, a number of positions with NIGP over the years. That's how we got to know each other originally.
Yes.
And I'd just like you to share with us how your volunteerism, whether it's been with NIGP or some other agency, how that has impacted your ability to respond to challenges, or maybe how what you've learned from a challenge has moved over to your volunteer opportunities.
Oh, wow. I accredit my volunteerism to so many things. The relationships that have developed with folks, like yourself, where I can phone a friend and I can call somebody who can help me as I'm going through a situation, or can fact check me, and I'm thinking this, am I totally out in left field? Because sometimes, as we're diving into a project or diving into something, we just get blinded by it, and we get lost in it. And having somebody to say, listen, I have looked at this so long, I don't even know what I'm looking at anymore. So, can you give me your perspective? And so building that network has been the greatest benefit that I have from volunteerism. But I will say I was fortunate even at the county level. I had both NIGP membership as well as SCAGPO, which is our chapter of NIGP here in South Carolina. And so had that membership and had agencies and always had bosses that supported professional development and involvement. So I immersed myself first in learning because I had no idea. I didn't know what I didn't know. So I had to expose myself to those things so I could figure it out. And so that really immersing myself in both the the chapter level really helped get me an understanding of procurement outside of my bubble of my agency onto a larger scale. And so then serving my chapter and getting involved on committees and then getting involved on the board really helped me see procurement in a different light, because again, we get in our bubble and we see the way that it is at that time. I saw how it was at the county, but what did that mean for the city, for the state, for a different county, for a different state? And it allows you to see things much differently than what your sphere of influence necessarily is. And so after working my way through just about every committee and board position known to man at SCAGPO, then I really wanted to start exposing myself to truly what are other people doing in the profession, because I don't know but this much, right? It's less about what I know, and more about who can help me and who else is an expert in that area and how can I connect them. My brain can never retain everything there is to know about everything that there is to know. So knowing how to connect to people, knowing how and getting those skills to help work in team, to be able to better collaborate, to be able to find information where it's hard to find information, to be able to explore all those opportunities that came through volunteering in some way, getting that exposure, how best to work and navigate through things, all came through that. So I don't think there's a hard line of which was affected more or less, my volunteerism or my service to my individual agencies. Both influenced in both directions, and the skill sets that came through that were just phenomenal. And then I was always apprehensive to get involved with NIGP. It seemed like, oh man, I'm just a little old South Carolina girl. What am I going to bring to this discussion? But I tell you what, for anybody that's hesitating and saying, well, I'm not ready for that, degree, don't wait. Don't wait. Get involved. You don't have to get to a certain level before you can contribute in some way. No matter where you are within your agency, within your state, wherever, you all have something to contribute. So that would be my message to anyone saying, man, I just don't have time for that. I say you don't have time not to. Because what I've learned from a professional development standpoint, how it's influenced my career progression is just phenomenal. I wouldn't be where I am today had I not been involved with volunteering on both the state and then the national level. Hands down, would not be where I am today without it.
And I couldn't agree with you more. When people say to me about, oh, I don't have time to volunteer, it doesn't have to be long term. It could be
No.
what we call an experiential thing, right? Like quality control team at Forum. You're, checking people at the door, you're introducing somebody. End of the session, you're done, you move on. But the other thing that I found, and maybe you have as well, the way that it's impacted your career, with building a network and having contacts. I have worked for some bosses who are really impressed by not so much what you know, but sometimes it's who you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
once they get a feel for, what your network is and the breadth of it,
Yeah.
in my experience, that has added a level of credibility that they didn't see previous to finding that information out. So
Yeah, and when you're faced with, a COVID situation, when you're faced with dealing with tariffs and you can go in, even if it's on the insight community, right? And you go into purchase shoes and say, anybody dealt with this, or you're searching in there and see, and having that ability to be able not to have to, learn from the school of hard knocks, but to be able to go in, see who you can talk to, have those connections, and be able to go back to your boss and say, hey, here's some ideas. This is what they've done in Georgia, Tennessee, California, whatever the case may be, to help support that it's not just Stacy coming up with some crazy harebrained idea or, the best idea ever, but that we have that network to pull from and learn from each other. Again, just I love that about our profession. We're so great about sharing. Love that. But it makes a difference, Linda, when you go back to your boss, and that shows as a value add of I'm not just taking up space and you're paying a membership and not getting anything out of it. I'm bringing something back that I've learned from it, whether it's through the experience of another individual, a training that you've set through, whatever the case may be, the insight community. There's lots of things that you do, but it really shows the value that you're pursuing in your membership and giving back to your agency more than, I've been a member since back in the day. Well, what have you done? Nothing really.
Absolutely true. I couldn't agree with you more. And Stacy, I just want to thank you for being with me today, sharing this with our viewers, because I think it's something they would be really interested in. And maybe it'll get rid of a little bit of that angst about how much volunteerism takes up your time, and the benefit that it brings to the table that you may not have been aware of, from the get-go. So thank you for being with me today. And thank you for viewing.
Linda.
This is Radio NIGP Procurement Pros on the Go.
Hi, I'm Ginger Line here with another chapter update. Forum is coming and it's in Denver. If you haven't registered, now is the time. I actually have Scott Harris here who is going to talk about Forum and what Denver and the host chapter is doing to prep for Forum. So we're going to hear from him, and we'll get excited about all the exciting things that you can do in Denver. Scott, welcome. Tell us, what are all of the duties that go along with being a host chapter?
Well, thank you, Ginger. So I believe it was back in 2022 when we found out that we were going to be hosting. I believe that was the year Forum was in Boston. But we were starting to put together plans about, what, external activities outside of, Forum can we do, whether it's, seeing, the Rockies, baseball, or any other activities like that. But we were, basically trying to get as many ideas as we could and see what would actually be viable. In the process of all that, I became, part of Denver Arts and Venues full time, which made it where I had access to, the arts complex, the convention center is one of our properties actually, so that's great. One of the fun procurements I got to do over the last year is we have purchased 18,000 new chairs for the convention center. So, hopefully, everyone, we will be saving a seat for you. And also we have Red Rocks, we have the Denver Coliseum, we have, the McNichols Civic Center building, 1245 Champa. So, we were trying to incorporate all of those areas right into Forum, because the majority of those are within a block and a half of the convention center. And just, trying to come up with some unique things that maybe people haven't seen before. With Charlotte last year, the big event was being held at the Charlotte Motor Speedway. Well, we don't have a motor speedway, and as it turns out, the Colorado Rockies are in Cleveland the week that Forum is here. So we were trying to find something else unique that we could do. Red Rocks is not, right on our doorstep. It's actually about 20 miles to the west of us, so it's not really an easy logistical thing to get to, but we are trying to get at least a couple of folks up there, and if you have time on your own, please take the trip. It's well worth it. Beyond that, we're looking forward to having everybody there. NIGP shuffled the schedule from what people are used to. I mean, most folks are accustomed to Forum being in August. Yes, we're doing the end of July, but also, um, Sunday night, instead of being an awards dinner, is going to be our social event, which will be at the downtown Denver Aquarium. The awards luncheon is on Monday afternoon. The expo is going to be on Monday and Tuesday, which should be, huge. And, there's also a very special event as we wrap everything up on Wednesday, for Rick Grimm's retirement.
That is awesome. So, I mean, Denver is amazing. I don't think anyone would want to go to the Motor Speedway twice. So, looking forward to the aquarium. But what are maybe even three things that if someone was going to see Denver, had a little bit of free time, what do you think they either should see or eat? Because I'm a big foodie, in Denver or while they're there.
Um, Being slightly impartial, my top thing is going to be Red Rocks. It is truly a moving experience. If people want to find me during Forum, I will explain why Red Rocks is so special to me. Not only the fact that I'm doing procurements for it daily, but I would definitely say it's worth the trip. Second thing, we do have the Denver Mint, where you can watch your money being processed. That does require reservations. So if you get a chance, jump on their website and you should be able to, set that up for the times that you're there. The third spot also, if you're going out to Red Rocks, you might as well, take a little detour, go into my hometown of Golden, and, take the Coors tour. So, not everyone is a fan of Coors beer, and I can tell you, growing up there, I'm not a big fan of it myself. But the tour is actually awesome. And Golden itself is a awesome little town. So, food wise, we have plenty of assorted types of food that people can come and enjoy. Also, even though it's not part of this list, downtown Denver is going through a revitalization right now. The 16th Street Mall is wrapping up construction, so hopefully it'll be completely new and improved for everyone to enjoy when you get there.
That is really exciting. I've been to Denver before, but I am excited. You can never see it all. So hopefully I'll be able to take in some of maybe that Coors tour, although Coors is also not my favorite, but that's okay. Um, I just want to mention that you can really feel your passion for what you do. And so I'm not going to send anyone to you in case they don't end up with a chair at Forum. But I do encourage everyone to seek you out and ask for all those amazing places to go and things to see. Really looking forward to Forum. Thank you for being here today and talking about Forum and the work that the host chapter has done to try to make it as good as possible within, time and budget allotment. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, and if anybody wants to, get a backstage tour of the arts complex, let me know. I'm happy to show that off as well. So
Awesome. Thank you.
Hello and welcome to Radio NIGP, Deeper Dive, Making a Splash. My name is Bobby Tolston, and I welcome you to this segment of Deeper Dive, Making a Splash for Mental Health Wellness Month during the month of May. I am so grateful to be joined here by this wonderful panel of procurement professionals to discuss this very important topic. Since October 6, 2022, I began my mental health journey. Since I started this journey, I have learned so much about myself, but more importantly, I've learned that addressing your mental health is not a choice. It's something that we each need to be very vigilant about, and your mental health is not something that you should take lightly. Today, we'll talk about mental health, and our theme for this segment is turn awareness into action. We're going to share with you some things, some tools, some tips, and some suggestions on some things that you can do as a procurement professional to turn awareness into action. But before we begin, I'd like to start with a little bit of statistical information. Mental Health Awareness Month began in the United States in 1949, about 76 years ago, and it was started by the Mental Health America, MHA. Each year in mid-March, they release a toolkit, and that toolkit includes this wonderful screen share that you all see that we are sharing with you, and other items that you can use to help spread awareness. I'd like to share with you a definition of mental health because I believe that in order for us to continue to address the stigma, we should first have the same vocabulary. So a statistic says that in 2022, 23.1% of the US adult population had some form or lived with mental illness. So two broad categories can be used to describe these conditions: any mental illness or AMI, and serious mental health illness or SMI. AMI encompasses all recognized mental illness. SMI is a smaller and more severe subset of AMI. AMI can be defined as a mental, behavior, or emotional disorder, and it can vary in impact, ranging from non impairment to mild, moderate, and even severe. Individuals with severe mental illnesses can be defined as behavior or emotional disorder, resulting in a serious functional impairment, which substantially interferes with or limits one or major life activities. So now we all have a definition and we can speak to it from that point and from that perspective. So I'd like to throw a question out to you guys. Understanding mental health and procurement. Mental health is essential in every profession, especially the procurement profession, where we're often pulled in various directions. But how does it show up in procurement? What do you guys think?
I think, to your point, understanding that mental health challenges, it varies a spectrum of things, and that mental well-being is not just a cookie cutter answer in that. So our difficulties might range in those temporary stressors like meeting a deadline or negotiating a complex contract or balancing the political difference to more persistent conditions like overwhelming anxiety and depression or personality disorders. And this really challenges and impacts a person's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in everything that they do in procurement and in life in general. So I think starting and also understanding that makes a difference, between what are those temporary things that can yield that well-being struggle versus what is something that we are battling every day.
Oh, yes. Yes, I concur wholeheartedly. And as procurement professionals, our day is we're wound up from the moment your feet hit the floor when you walk into your office until you leave. And with that, it comes with its own unique set of circumstances. And sometimes just stopping to take a breath takes a moment. What do you think, Lourdes?
Well, mental health sometimes it shows up as sort of the silent fatigue, and it's kind of what Stacy was talking about, this burnout from the constant firefighting that we do on a daily basis, decision fatigue, isolation now with after COVID, moral distress when you have competing priorities that don't align with your values, role ambiguity. Sometimes it creates a cognitive dissonance between your values and what is expected of you. And then we can include in there imposter syndrome, perfectionism, that constant battle to seek to be the best that you can be and perform at your highest, that can cause a lot of stress. And we bottle it up And when we list expected, it just shows up in a way that is counterproductive for in our profession and in our daily life, and it affects us from the health perspective. It affects us not only professionally but personally.
Yes, absolutely. And not to mention the stigma that is associated with mental health, which makes people very apprehensive to discuss it, even with their loved ones and their closest friends. To talk about it at work is something that is definitely changing as time goes on. I can recall 10 years ago, I would not feel comfortable sitting here having this discussion knowing that it's going to be recorded into perpetuity and having people to look at me going, wow, is something wrong with you? Well, since I've been on this journey, I know that the something that's wrong with me is something that's temporary, right? It's all about how you think about it. So turning an awareness into action. How can we do that, guys?
I think what you're talking about, what we're doing right here, is one of the ways to bring it into action. I'm older than most of you, so I remember back during my early career. I mean, it wouldn't even be mentioned. It was a situation, you do your job, you work, you work, you work, you work. Well, now, if I suggest the idea of giving people a 5-minute break every hour or so just to take a breath,
Yes.
historically that would have been no, you're not getting productivity out of them that 5 minutes. But today, people are beginning to realize that if I can have somebody focused for 50 minutes an hour and relaxing for 10 minutes an hour, it's a whole lot better than having somebody stressed out and not able to focus on anything all day long.
Yes,
But
Don.
historically, it wasn't looked at that like that. And I've had the opportunity. Multiple people in my family have had some mental health issues. One thing I want to say though is the definitions you read, I don't like them at all because
Okay.
they call it mental. In both cases, they call it mental illness, and I don't consider it to be an illness any more than I consider the fact that I wear contact lenses to be a major disability. It's part of life. Everybody has mental health. I'll call them issues. You know, and it's just how they deal with them and how the people around them deal with them that makes the difference. So anyway, those are my thoughts on it.
I appreciate that so much, Don, because I would like to address and talk about avoiding labels, right? People do not like labels, and illness does not sound like something that is positive. So now I would like to introduce a new term, mental health condition.
I'll take it.
Thank you. So, anyone else want to share about turning awareness into action at work?
Here, I think, if we're aware now that, people are showing up with whatever's going in their life and they like the condition or their status that day, it's not always going to be the same. It's a reflection of everything else that's going on. And then they're walking into this pressure cooker that is often the procurement office. And I love, what Don said about, how, you know, expecting people to consistently work versus, can I get a short period of time where you're fully engaged versus expecting like this constant production. I think we have a responsibility as individuals to look at ourselves and realize when we're not giving our best, and anyone who manages or supervises people, we have a responsibility to be the mirror for those teams that we are, expected to lead. And if they aren't recognizing it in themselves, or maybe they are afraid to talk about it, to create an environment where it's okay to talk about how they're doing that day so that they can feel good about what they're doing and not feel like they're not showing up at their best and they're not doing their best work. And on top of that, what can we change? So we can't always change all of the problems and the hardships that we face, but what can we have control of and what can we focus on where those challenges we can start to move towards a resolution without burning people out.
maybe I can't change the fact that we have all of these projects, but I can go to the director of that division and say, hey, we are burning out, and I want you to tell me what your priorities are, because we need to reallocate our time and energy so that we aren't burning out.
That is an awesome segue into celebrating progress in the profession. I can tell you that as a leader, I found myself pouring from an empty cup, right? I was pouring into everyone else except myself. So I want to say that as we celebrate um, our transition into just not being aware, but moving into action, that we become more self aware. And if we're aware of our own emotions and what we're going through, then we can be that leader or that person that people look up to. So, how can we celebrate progress in the profession? What can we do?
I got some. So,
Hey,
I mean, I think the fact, obviously, that we're having a conversation and that now this is more commonplace, I think is a leap forward. It's something to be celebrated. I think kind of removing that stigma of, mental health and awareness being something that you can talk about. Um, you guys mentioned it 10 years ago, it wasn't a conversation, but now it's heavily prevalent. So I think for me, it's really celebrating it as being intentional about it. And I know here and with my team and anybody I come across, I try to make sure I leave space. I'm intentional with being cognizant that people are going through things. I said all the time, we spend half our life at work, so you can't expect, human beings to come and to shut off the emotional part of them. So I think for me, celebration is it would coincide with acknowledging and then a little bit of that call to action, right? That's also for me as a celebration because one of the issues that I see a lot, and I've dealt with it, is anxiety. A large portion of our job, we have to speak publicly. We have to get in front of people. We have to tell people difficult news. We have to say no. And um, quick story, I remember a team member, she was maybe 2 months in and she had real anxiety. It was a big janitorial contract. And one thing I learned a long time ago, and I think it was a good strategy, is to write everything that could possibly go wrong down.
mm,
Just write it down, get it all out, see if that'll do something. And sure enough, it helped a little bit in transitioning and moving away from some of that anxiety. So I think how we celebrate it is to continue to talk about it, to be intentional and providing a work environment that's okay, that to not be okay. Um, so I
well,
think that's probably the most important thing is, and I don't know if that answers or that's right in line, but I think the celebration is to actually to continue to move it forward.
I like your tool that you gave her about writing down everything. That's another thing as leaders we all ought to be doing is trying to do as much research as we can, but figure out what are the options and then let our staffs know here are some options, here's some ideas. And as part of that, you could talk about your organization's, assistance programs or whatever, but writing down anything that could go wrong, doing yoga, going for walks, listening to podcasts as you go for walks, whatever, and give them a lot of different options because not all of us react the same way to different things. We were talking the other day about some people like to do puzzles just to reduce their anxiety and to become calm. Doing a puzzle drives me crazy. I get anxious out. Where's this piece going to go? And that's going to be the last thing I need to do. But other people react differently. So if we can give our teams a toolbox of things that they can use to help calm their nerves, reduce their anxiety, get over their, help their depression. Depression's a tough one, but the bottom line is people can't just pull themselves up by the socks, rub some dirt on it, and go back to work. They've got to focus on it and face it.
Don, I like puzzles. I like to put puzzles together, just kind of figure it out. And but I like what you said, and it's this thing about mindfulness. It's now acceptable to talk about mindfulness and mindfulness, being present in the moment and recognizing that people need those mental breaks. They call it, there's a cycle that is called ultradian cycle that is a 90-second, I'm sorry, 90-minute cycle where you go through these ups and downs and ups and downs. So you want to, every 90 minutes or so, you want to take a mental break because you're no longer, your productivity declines from there so that then you can recharge and be productive again. So I think those mental breaks are so important to do that. And, I might, I might take a puzzle. Done.
Well, one thing I think is important, Bobby, if you don't mind, is that we really have to create this culture of open communication and active listening and psychological safety, right? So if I may not go up and be like, Bobby, are you anxious? George, are you depressed? Dawn, do you have PTSD? But what I can do is I can create a safe environment where we can celebrate learning from mistakes rather than pointing fingers and creating blames, heightening that sense of failure or that self-doubt. We can avoid blaming. Mistakes are going to happen, right? Don't focus on the person and face the blame there, but how can we solve this problem? And really just acknowledging and valuing diverse opinions and perspectives, knowing that and creating that inclusive environment where everyone feels heard, seen, and respected, regardless of what you're doing in a day-to-day meeting, in problem solving, brainstorming, dealing with your personal issues, right? Regardless of your background, regardless of your experience, you're safe here to bring whatever you need to bring to the circle, and we're going to handle it together. And I think that's oh so important.
That's a very good point, Stacy, because as a leader, you set the tone, right? And this is what they called mirror neurons, which people just tend to mirror what you do. It becomes contagious, your attitude, the way that you conduct yourself. And when you model that behavior for your team, that it's okay to be vulnerable, it's okay to ask for help, it's okay to need a break, it's okay to maybe need a walk around the block. Now you create an environment that is safe for them to, come forward and say, I'm at capacity. I need a mental break. So, yeah.
Wow, this has been such great discussion. And what I'm walking away with is we need to be intentional about our mental well-being. We need to create safe space for ourselves and for those that work with us. We need to also be intentional about creating that environment and mirroring the behaviors that we expect from others. But we have to also be our authentic selves and show up every day knowing that we are only in control of ourselves. And if everyone controlled themselves, what a wonderful world we live in. So thank you so much for joining us and taking a deeper dive into this topic. Happy Mental Wellness Month. And thank you guys so much for joining us. And we hope to see you back here again real soon. Take care.
Hello, friends. I hope you have enjoyed this broadcast of Radio NIGP, where we have highlighted the importance of mental well-being. Bless our hearts. We are indeed our own worst critics, and we are often harder on ourselves than anyone else ever could be. Let's try to find some ways to be kind to our mind and not add unnecessary stress to ourselves. As we move forward, following what we've discussed today, let's ask ourselves, what's one meaningful step that we as procurement professionals can take to support mental health in the workplace? I would say start by creating a supportive culture. Foster a sense of belonging, manage workloads and expectations, and try to identify and mitigate workplace stressors. Address conflict, manage workload, and ensure you've created a safe work environment. Have supportive mental health conversations and reduce the stigma that we shouldn't talk about it. And let everybody know it's okay to not be okay sometimes. Offer those resources and support and promote work-life balance. Small everyday actions can make huge differences in creating a healthier work culture. Whether you're conducting a sourcing meeting or supplier call or having team check-ins, be kind always. You never know what someone else is going through. And be helpful, understanding that not everyone understands what we do or why we do it in certain ways. And be patient and support learning new things. And remember, this applies towards others and to yourself. And until next time, friends, take care of yourself, body, mind, and spirit.
Thank you.